Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Walking Summit. This session, so hopefully you'll be in the right session, this session is pedestrian-centered design, and we have three speakers, the first of which is Catherine Knight, the second Patrícia Vasconcelos, and the third Julie Woods. First up is Dr. Catherine Knight, who works in public policy with a focus on creating livable cities, especially through better urban form and the provision of public and active transport. Catherine's an award-winning environmental historian and the author of several acclaimed books, including Beyond Manapouri, 50 Years of Environmental Politics, and Nature and Wellbeing in Aotearoa, New Zealand. He has a strong interest in post-growth and well-being economy and writes on these topics on Newsroom, the Spinoff, and on Substack. Catherine's also an Honorary Research Associate at Massey University, and Catherine's going to be talking about changing the world one neighbourhood at a time through walking. So, sorry, I better just check to see if there's anything else I need to mention before we actually do get going. Sorry about that. No, I think that's probably all. So we'll be going through till midday, and then there'll be a break for lunch. But firstly, it's Dr. Catherine Knight. Over to you, Catherine.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to speak today at this important summit. So I'm speaking to you with two hats on today. The first is as a wellbeing economy advocate and author, my latest book being In Uncommon Land, From an Ancestral Past of Enclosure Towards a Regenerative Future. My second hat is as a strategic policy advisor working at the interface between transport and urban form at a regional level. And I just wanted to note that this panel is pedestrian-centered design, and I don't really have any expertise in this. Instead, I'm going to be speaking on the bigger picture. I guess the rationale, the reason why we need to be thinking about this. So I wanted to start the talk with my first hat on. So as I'm sure you're all aware, while it is climate change that gains the most attention, we in fact face a polycrisis. Of the 9 processes that scientists have identified as critical for maintaining the stability and resilience of the Earth system as a whole, 7 are now transgressed, with ocean acidification being the latest to be breached. In addition, we face a public health crisis. While infectious diseases have been brought under control with vaccines and other medicinal advances, lifestyle diseases have reached epidemic proportions, placing huge pressure on a public health system already at breaking point. One of the key factors in the explosion of lifestyle diseases is our sedentary lifestyles. Social isolation and other lifestyle factors are also driving record levels of mental health suffering, including depression. But we are told globally, the consumption of fossil fuels has never been higher, and renewables languish at less than 10% of all energy consumption. In other words, there is no transition. Renewable energy is additive rather than a substitution, as can be seen from this graph. And if emissions were our only problem, we could probably just technologize our way out of the mess. But sadly, it is not that simple. Our economy and way of life is harming the planet's Earth supporting capacity on multiple fronts, including pollution of our air, water, and land, and destruction of our forests, wetlands, and other ecosystems. so vital not just for biodiversity, but also for carbon sequestration and resilience. This tells us that just swapping out our current fossil fuel emissions gushing transport system with an electrified one won't work. Technically, it is unviable. Biophysically, it is unfeasible. And energetically, it is unattainable. But it will also perpetuate many of the same harms that the current system does. So, what is the actual solution? Well, I don't really need to tell you. As Living Street Aotearoa members and supporters, you already know the answer. Our cities and towns have been built around cars rather than people, but we can change this. By clustering high amenity, mixed use communities around public transport nodes with ample public realm spaces, we could reduce the carbon, material, and energy intensity of our lives and improve health and well-being through active transport and improved social connection. Obviously, thanks to COVID-era conspiracy theories, we can no longer call these 15-minute neighbourhoods. In my book, An Uncommon Land, I describe them as urban villages. Places like Paris and Portland, Oregon, you know, the place made famous by the anti-Trump No Kings movement, inflatable frogs. But the good news is we don't have to look overseas to find examples of this. We can reach into our past. In the 1910s, my great-grandparents, Totty and Howard, moved into their newly built family home in Mount Albert just in time for my grandmother, Catherine, to be born. Like most inner suburbs of the time, Mount Albert was effectively an urban village, a self-contained community with most services and amenities within walking distance. Like most householders at the time, Totty and Howard grew their own vegetables and fruit and preserved or exchanged the surplus with neighbours. For their other needs, the Mount Albert shops were just a 10-minute walk away from their home and included a greengrocer.
Are you able to see my screen?
A greengrocer, butcher, haberdashery, a barber, a dentist, and nearby a doctor. For longer trips elsewhere in Auckland, a tram ran along nearby New North Road into central Auckland, and from there, almost any suburban destination could be reached by a combination of tram ride and by foot. By 1938, the city was serviced by an extensive network of electric trams that ran along most of the city's major roads, totaling 71 kilometres in length. But by the 1950s, the motor car had become affordable enough for more households to buy and was becoming omnipresent. It spelled the end for the trams. Auckland's extensive network of tram lines was pulled up, and the familiar clackety-clack of passing trams fell silent in the late 1950s. In turn, the private motor car allowed Auckland to sprawl beyond its original borders, swallowing up satellite towns, farmland, market gardens, and natural heritage as it swelled still further. But this transformation did not happen by itself. It happened as a direct result of planning rules, government investment in roads, motorways, and other vehicle-oriented infrastructure, and of course, generous subsidies for road freight at the cost of rail freight. Which means that with good planning and the right investment and incentives, urban villages of the future could once again be created with benefits for people and the planet. So before I finish, I would like to pop my other hat on and share with you some tools and strategies that myself and the team at Greater Wellington Regional Council have developed. Firstly, the Urban Design Toolkit, developed by WSP, to show how urban design at various scales, single property, block, neighbourhood and town centre scales, can be used as a powerful lever to reduce not only our emissions footprint, but also be lighter and indeed regenerative for the environment, while also leading to better health and social outcomes for residents. Its genesis was the VKT, Vehicle Kilometres Travelled, reduction program, which in turn supported the first emissions reduction plan before it was disestablished, along with the funding for all these climate emission reduction initiatives via the CERF Fund, Climate Emissions Reduction Fund. Secondly, our Transport System 2050. This strategic document sets out the evidence base for a transport system that maximises public good while simultaneously minimising environmental and climate harm, ultimately at a smaller financial cost to government. It uses the failure demand lens to highlight aspects of the current system that are leading to significant downstream costs, whether financial, economic, social, or environmental. Areas of failure demand that were identified, analysed, and where possible quantified were road wear and tear, road deaths and injuries and other health impacts, climate and environment pollution, and the social, health, and productivity costs of inequitable transport accessibility. So this slide just shows two of these. And finally, this is the infrastructure costs and urban form report my team commissioned, inspired by the work of Urban 3 in the US. This important report analysed roading and three waters costs to show that more density in central locations is much more affordable for councils and therefore the ratepayer than low density sprawl. This graph shows this relationship with greenfield developments way up the y-axis. These tools and strategies show that saving the planet one walkable neighbourhood at a time is not only feasible, but also ultimately it will cost the government and us, the taxpayer, less. And it also makes for more connected communities, vibrant local economies, a better environment, and healthier and happy people. So let's do it. Let's save the planet one walkable neighbourhood at a time, starting with yours and mine. So just finally, to finish, this final slide shows where on the Greater Wellington Regional Council website you can find these documents I mentioned, and also my book and the Newsroom article that told the story of Auckland's urban villages. And if you are keen to read more about my musings on livable cities, well-being centred economies, and the revitalisation of the commons, you can find me on Substack. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Catherine. That's great. And I'm sure there will be questions arising from that we'll deal with later. So, sorry, I forgot to mention earlier, just a reminder to people that if you have any questions about any of the matters raised by our presenters, just put it into the live Q&A where there's a button down there on the bottom of the screen, I believe. So, thank you. Very interesting and makes me somewhat envious of your great-grandparents. I guess they were up in Mount Albert. It seems Mount Albert's a bit of a historical hotbed of progressive thought. Right, we're going to move on now to hear from Patrícia Vasconcelos from New Zealand Transport Agency. And we asked our presenters to respond to the question, why does walking matter? So in response, Patrícia said, walking contributes to accessibility, healthier communities, and encourages active lifestyles. Greater walkability contributes to less congested streets and more options for getting around safely. I'll just repeat that, more options for getting around safely. And in many cases, there can be clear benefits for resilience and value for money, as Catherine just alluded to also about the economic case for more walkable communities. Patrícia is going to talk to us today about the Pedestrian Network Guide and what's new in that. So it was in draft form, I believe, earlier in the year, and then was finalised in recent months. So I think it's now over to Patrícia.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me here today. As Chris said, I'm Patrícia Vasconcelos. I'm a principal specialist in the multimodal and urban design team in the technical standards group at New Zealand Transport Agency, Waka Kotahi. Our team develops multimodal and urban design guidance and specifications. We also lead education and training in our subject matter expert areas to inform and upskill others. So as Chris said, today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Pedestrian Network Guidance, aka PNG, and how to navigate it before. But before, I would really like to remind us why walking planning and design is important. And is because everyday journeys begin with walkable spaces. Pedestrian urban design are key features to enable that and to also to have the ability or the impairment of choice of walking. So the Pedestrian Network Guidance is New Zealand's national standards for planning, designing, delivering, and maintaining pedestrian networks. You can access it by visiting New Zealand Transport Agency Waka Kotahi page, or through a Google search, or by bookmarking this address in your browser, and the address is this one that you can see here. So the Pedestrian Network Guidance provides best practice tailored to the New Zealand regulatory and operating environments for creating great pedestrian experience. This guidance is intended to ensure that the transport system caters for the needs of pedestrians by setting a consistent standards. And we have 9 chapters and an overview, as you can see here. So last time I spoke at the Walking Summit in 2023, we were in the process of finishing it and ratifying the document. Now I can proudly say that the Pedestrian Network Guidance is approved and published. So today I'm going to give you an introduction to the content and how it can help you, but I'm also going to highlight the changes in the format of the PNG that we have now from the previous version. So this is the landing page of the PNG, and you can find information on how the guidance was developed and is continuously updated by clicking the box here outlined in yellow. In the overview page, you can also find a link to all of the walking research reports conducted by Waka Kotahi. Here on the right, you can see some snapshots of how that overview page looks like, and also we have at the top a table of contents. So chapter 1 is walking in New Zealand. This chapter describes the benefits of walking and contains statistics and trends related to walking in New Zealand. This information can be very useful for developing business case and engaging with people about plans and designs. Chapter 2 is planning. For pedestrian means designing for all human capabilities and states. This chapter can help people understand who's walking and their needs, and describes the 7 key characteristics of a pedestrian network, which should all be considered within all planning processes. Chapter 3 is design. The design chapter establishes the principles that should underpin every design. It also gets into the details for paths, crossings, intersections, and supporting infrastructure such as street furniture, wayfinding, lighting, etc. Chapter 4 is implementation and maintenance. As we know, maintenance can affect pedestrian movements, so it's important to manage maintenance activities well to improve the environment and maintain assets without undue disruption to pedestrians. This chapter also provides guidance on how to implement temporary traffic management that caters for pedestrians as well as other modes. It also provides guidance on how to improve pedestrian infrastructure in conjunction with maintenance activities, as depicted here in this slide in the before and after image, where through the maintenance, they grab the opportunity to improve this path under the bridge. So chapter 5 is reviews and audits, and this should be undertaken as part of the planning and design process for projects, including existing and new streets or networks, to check that the design adheres to best practice and meets the needs of pedestrians. This chapter describes the different types of reviews and audits and gives advice on when, in the planning and design process, they can be applied. Chapter 6 to 8 contain links to related guidance, training videos, and case studies. We also provide a glossary of important terms used in the pedestrian network guidance. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the format of the guidance has changed. It is now a hybrid of HTML and PDF format. This makes a departure from the previous version, which was available solely in HTML format. Another major change is numbering. The PNG now contains section numbers, as you can see in the slides, like Wellbeing New Zealand has chapter 1 now. These help people to note where information is located and easily refer to it. So how to access the guidance? When on the landing page of the PNG, to access its content, click on the chapter tile. This will take you to an overview page where you can access the PDF. You can view the PDF in the browser or download it. However, please note, while it's possible to download the PDF, we advise you to always refer to the website to make sure that you have the latest guidance. Most chapters have this format, with one exception being the design chapter. And this is because this chapter contains so much good information that we needed to break it up into subchapters, as you can see here on this side of the slide. So to access it, as before, you click on the tile, and then this leads you to a page with the subchapters or topics. Once you click on that, you'll be led then to the overview page where you can download the PDF for that topic. And here is an example of the paths subtopic. Chapters 6 to 8, as well as the glossary, are in HTML format only. So to access these, you click on the chapter tile, and this will take you to the page where the content of the topic is. Here's an example of how to access the related guidance and tools topic. So basically you click, and then here you will see, and you click then in the arrows to access the content. I hope this introduction helps you navigate the guidance. Please take a look, use and apply the guidance to create walkable spaces. Thank you very much again, and I'm happy to take any questions at the end of this session. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Patricia. Yes, we've often had calls to go and have a look at the site, and very pleased to see that it's also been done in PDF form, because our initial experience was that it was easy to get lost in it. But recognise the need to make sure we click on the site first and get the most up-to-date PDF as well. Thank you for that. And I actually even remember when its predecessor, the PPDG, the Planning Pedestrian Design Guide, came out in the 2007-8. That was a real step change, I think, to pedestrian design guidance in New Zealand. So glad that that has been updated. All right, thank you very much. Yes, and just that reminder, if there are any questions, please just put it into the live Q&A for now, and we'll come back to them at the end of the third speaker who's about to come on, Julie, and we'll deal with all the questions at that time. So Julie Woods is our next speaker, and Julie's from Dunedin, and Julie's response to the question, why does walking matter, was walking matters because it helps me to keep fit and connects me to people and to place. I've lived in Dunedin for most of my 59 years, and walking every street of Dunedin took me to places I had never been to. The small rope that connects me with my guide Joe also gives me an opportunity to stay connected to a good friend. When life is busy, we get to walk and talk our way around the suburbs and catch up with each other. I love walking. So that small rope was a literal small rope rather than a figurative one, because Julie is blind and has been walking all of these streets with the assistance of a good friend. So that's what Julie is going to talk to us about today, walking every street in Dunedin. Julie, over to you. Hopefully you're about to appear. You have. Thank you.
Have I appeared?
You have. It's all over to you.
Can you hear me?
Can.
Yay, kia ora, Chris. Thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tatou katoa. Greetings, greetings, greetings to you all. Kia ora, ko Julie Woods aho. I'm that blind woman. Julie Woods, professional speaker, author, advocate and coach, and ambassador for Blind Low Vision NZ, and coming to you today from Aotearoa, Dunedin. My walking story begins, I'd have to say, in a very unconventional way. My walking story begins when I was told in 1997 that I would never see again. I was 31 years of age, married with 2 boys, aged 3 and 1. And I felt powerless and overwhelmed, and I had no idea of how I was going to cope. I had been diagnosed with inflammation of the retina, which within 3 months took most of my remaining vision, and all I had left was moving shapes and high contrasting shadows. I couldn't drive a car, I couldn't read print, I couldn't get outside my own front gate. I asked for help at Blind Low Vision NZ, as it is known now, and they sent up many instructors to my house to teach me how to pour a cup of tea, how to butter a piece of bread and put jam on it, how to use the telephone, and how to use my white cane safely. They taught me how to get out of my front gate, how to cross the roads, how to cross the streets, how to go up and down stairs, and how to hop on and off escalators. One day I got asked to go cross-country skiing by the recreation advisor, and I said, cross-country skiing? That sounds really dangerous. Not sure about that. Something might happen to me, might fall over. Bunch of blind people, that's a bit random. And I politely declined and went home and sat on my couch that night and thought, hang on a minute, Julie, what kind of blind person are you going to make if you turn down opportunities that come your way? I didn't even know what cross-country skiing was. I turned it down based on fear and ignorance, and I caught myself. So from that moment on, I decided that when anyone would ask me to do something new, rather than say no, I would say, why not? I said, why not? To do you want to learn Braille? I said, why not? To do you want to come to speak at our donor function? And I said, why not? To do you want to go walking at the weekend? I had met Joe at antenatal classes. We had sons at the same time, 2 days apart, me, Zachary, her, Lawrence, and we started attending life after birth classes at the Dunedin Parent Centre and became friends. One day she said to me, "Do you want to go walking at the weekend?" To which I said, "Why not?" And as Chris has already alluded, we had a small rope that connected us, and she held one end and I held the other, and we walked around the block. We then walked around the neighbourhood, and we then decided to enrol in our first walking event, the 10 kilometres Masters Games event, and we did that in 2000. We decided to enrol in our first Dunedin half marathon in 2001, which we completed successfully, although we didn't have any markings on our clothing, and part of the course goes down towards Port Chalmers on State Highway 88, and the runners that would come behind us kind of got annoyed because we were two abreast, and that's a bit awkward to pass. So a woman came behind us and kind of got a bit grumpy, and I politely stepped to my right, and unbeknownst to me, there was one of those obstacles, that the cars don't go into the harbour, and I hit that and careered to the ground and skidded along the gravel as she sailed past. We fixed that the next year by putting blind walker and sighted guide on the back of our t-shirts, something that we've done ever since, and completed our 10th half marathon in 2017. I was hit by a bus in 2016 when we were out for a morning walk, and part of that route, as I said, was going down to Port Chalmers, and the buses would come back with the runners because we were always at the back, and they would toot and holler and wave and cheer, and me with my post-traumatic trauma from being hit by the bus, I found that very confronting. So we did actually hang up our half marathons the same year that Dunedin half marathons or marathons celebrated 30 years. So when we did our 10th half marathon, we got a medal, which was quite coincidental, but it's hanging above me, framed with my race number for that day. We stopped walking events for a while and had a break and thought, I remember hearing about a man called Dave Henry who walked every street in Dunedin. So I said to Jo, "Do you want to walk every street in Dunedin?" To which she said, "Why not?" We got ourselves some singlets that had "I am walking every street in Dunedin" on the front, and blind walker and sighted guide on the back, and my husband joined us as photographer. His t-shirt said as such. So on the 8th of March 2019, International Women's Day, we began walking every street in Dunedin. But what is Dunedin? Nobody could tell me. Nobody knew what the boundary for Dunedin was. I made many calls to the Dunedin City Council, and the only boundary that there was available was Greater Dunedin, which goes right the way up to Waikawaiti in the north, Middlemarch in the west, Aramoana in the east, and Tairangmouth in the south. So that was too big for us. So I decided, being a citizen of Dunedin, that I would create my own boundary. And we walked from Pine Hill in the north to Concord in the south, from Halfway Bush in the west to Vauxhall in the east, 1,034 streets, 44 suburbs, right through COVID, when it was really important for us to have an adventure. We had a walking adventure. On the 15th of October 2022, we completed our goal by walking down Every Street. And yes, there is a street in Dunedin called Every Street. We decided to make that our last street. We were joined by the Deputy Mayor, Sophie Barker, at the time, and the administrator of Watch News Dunedin Facebook group, where we posted every week one of our streets and wrote a little story about what we had been doing. And Rose Every, who was a descendant of George Every. So we all walked down Every Street and completed our goal. at that moment, we felt kind of, now what? So at this moment, we decided that we would walk Greater Dunedin one street at a time. So it was only a couple of weeks later that we got new T-shirts that said, I am walking Greater Dunedin one street at a time, with blind walker and sighted guide on the back. And we started our adventure to walk the extra 1,008 streets in Greater Dunedin. There are 176 streets in Mosgiel. We walked to Taieri Mouth, the streets around Taieri Mouth. We walked around Aramoana. We have 331 streets left to walk. We walk in the summer, we walk in the winter, we walk in the rain, we walk in the snow. Every Saturday morning, Joe picks Ron and I up in the car and we drive to our destination and walk around our streets and then come home and make the post. When I went blind in 1997, I couldn't have imagined that I'm living the life that I'm living now. I thought my life had ended, but little did I realise that it only just begun the day I said, why not, to Do You Want to Go Walking at the weekend. Kia ora, thank you.
Well, thank you, Julie. That's truly inspirational and is probably a lesson for many, many people in life. You're very fortunate to have had the character to be able to do that. Not everybody does. Right. We are now.
Chris.
Sorry.
You can build character.
Indeed.
Thank you.
We are now going to go into a Q&A session. So hopefully you'll have some questions for our speakers. I don't see any at the moment, although I certainly have some. So maybe while I ask a few of those, the audience, you could add yours to the live Q&A and I'll pick those up there. I guess going back to Catherine's presentation, one of the things that I was wondering, here in Palmerston North, which is where I'm based, we've recently gone through a hearing process for I think they're calling it medium density housing. So a large part of the city is probably going to be rezoned, and the rules as what you can do in that area will change. The idea is that it will result in much more intensively used land. When that sort of thing happens, it doesn't happen overnight. So the plan will come into effect, and then it might take 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years to actually be fully carried out, so that the intensification will occur over a long period of time. How do you deal with that transition period when maybe the density of population in that area still isn't sufficient to support various businesses that you might want to have within walkable distance? Have you seen or thought about how to get through that period when you know what it's going to be like in the end, but the things that will make it a better place to be and to live in and make it more desirable for people just aren't in place yet? Any thoughts?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Chris. Absolutely, these things take time, but I think what is critical is being really clear. So city leaders, or in Palmerston North's case, Papaoia, being really clear with the overall long-term vision, that's where we're heading to. This is the destination. But secondly, I think in the early stages, when we're sort of moving to this model of more urban density, to do it really well, to start off with some model projects that really exemplify what we're aiming for. So I think one of the things that we often see when we see medium density developments pop up in our neighbourhoods in our cities, if they're not done very well, and I can think of a couple of examples near where I live, where they're in brilliant places. They might be near a rail station. I live in the Greater Wellington region, so we're really lucky to be serviced by Metro Rail. But they don't necessarily reach their full potential in other ways, like in terms of green space, public realm, looking appealing and attractive from the streetscape and interacting with the streetscape in a really in a beneficial way. And when people see sort of lower quality, medium density going in, the reaction, in fact, it can be counterproductive, because they think, well, we don't want that. We don't want that here. Whereas, so I think there is lots of, one thing that we're really hoping that might get off the ground in the Wellington region is, in fact, a urban development agency, potentially an entity, a bit like Eke Penuku, which was a CCO, council-controlled organisation in Auckland until recently, but has now been subsumed into the council, where there can be really high-level master planning, strategic master planning, where this agents can be involved in land agglomeration, and work with partners, work with the private sector to really maximise the public benefits, as opposed to just the development sector looking at maximising, profit through developments, because those two don't. If it was a Venn diagram, those two things won't necessarily overlap. So I think, in the case of Palmerston North, it would be great if perhaps there could be a couple of really exemplar projects where the council is strongly involved in one shape or form, either through master planning or whatever, to really maximise the benefits and show the public and the community as a whole that if we do this well, it will benefit everyone. And also to orient it around non-car dependent transport, to ensure that there is good public transport links, good active transport links, obviously, but also high amenities. So lots of access to, schools, the pharmacy, shops, retail, etc., and parks, green space, the things that people really need to live good lives. So that's a long answer to your very good question.
Thank you, but a very helpful and thoughtful answer. I was aware that some years ago there was somebody who I haven't heard of for a long time now, Billy Cortez, had a double-barreled family name, over in West Australia, in Perth. I think she looked at that question, and I think there was a development there where they tried to put some things in place basically right from the start. So it had a small commercial shopping sort of area, where you could get, I don't know exactly the range of things that you could get, but it was already there, so that when people started moving into the new houses and apartments, that was the place they went to, rather than still thinking that they had to drive into town to do that sort of business.
Yeah, Chris, that is the key, actually, and same with public transport, if that is possible, if the city supports it. But you're 100% onto it there. I've noticed with a lot of developments, they often make quite big promises. There's going to be a little retail, a commercial centre, and so on, but it doesn't actually end up necessarily happening. And I think you're absolutely right. If it's there from the start, and when residents' habits are forming, then that's utterly vital. And unfortunately, I don't think in New Zealand we've been done that so well. There's been some great examples up in Auckland, but not really, just only sort of a handful really. So I think there is so much potential to do this better. And Australia is doing some great work in this respect, including around transport-oriented development with, you know, mixed use, high amenity, integrated with transport.
All right, well, thank you. Now let's move to Patrícia. Patrícia, you made a statement, I think I heard, that the PNG is New Zealand's national standard for providing walking infrastructure, which to that effect. That would be the greatest news that walking advocates could possibly have, and the key word there was standard. My understanding is that it's a guidance document. It's not a standard, and we've been long advocating for it to be a standard because we often encounter examples where the former PPDG, the Pedestrian Planning and Design Guide, wasn't followed on various pretexts. How could it become a standard? What is the process of getting it to be a standard, and what are the barriers to doing so?
Oh, that's a very good question, Chris, and interesting that you mentioned that, because when I said the word, I thought, oh, perhaps I shouldn't have used this word, and that is because you are right. It's not a standard in the sense that it's a must. It's only recommendations, advice, and best practice of what people should do, but it's not a must do. And you are correct in pointing that out. The changes, it also really depends on, we can, if our state highway, so NZTA Waka is also a road controlling authority. So we could say, okay, for our state highway network, this is really a standard. This is things that when we do a project as a must. So we could have that as an internal standard. For external, for other RCIs and other road control authorities like Auckland, Wellington, and so on, it really depends on their local standards. So what we aim with the PNG is to set that bar that if you are going to do a standard in the sense of a must, then you should follow this guidance to have that good, that really we are sure that we are planning and designing to cater for the needs of all pedestrians. Barriers is exactly that, is also the willingness of the local councils to say, yeah, that's what I want, so let's put that in the district plan, for example. In our, yeah.
So incorporating it into district plans by reference.
And their set of rules, yes.
Yeah. What about, I mean, not very much transport infrastructure goes in without co-funding between local councils and central government, and NZTA is the conduit for that funding. Are conditions ever put on that funding that perhaps the various design guides, not just for the pedestrian design guide, but for other modes as well, would have to be followed, or very good reasons be provided for not following?
Yeah, exactly. So if we are funding or co-funding a project, we require that the project follows best practice and our guidance. But if they not, then, as you say, they really have to justify why the departure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen some very good examples. We had a transport choices project here. I think it was under that program. A very hotly contested stretch of road near various schools and a very busy intersection. but some very, very good design features in it. So it would be great if that could be the norm, and that project was majority funded by NZTA, but a lot of then the funding is substantially less. I think our FAR here in Palmerston North is roughly 50%, but I think that was a project that was 90 or 95% co-funded. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And Julie, why not? Why not? That's a great question, and I've been seeing some reports recently on the benefits of doing new things for aging, and how it can help to keep people so much healthier if they are often engaging in new activities. And I thought it often, so your description of your fear of cross-country skiing, I think is probably what often holds people back from saying, well, yes, I'm going to. Do you have any sort of messages for those of us who are getting on and wanting to stay active and healthy, and how do you get through the hard bits, because learning can be tough?
Yes, it can be tough. And what amazes me, Chris, is that we often predetermine whether we're going to like something or not in a split second by answering no. And I just notice it all the time. It's whether it's around learning something new or doing some exercise or doing something you don't want to do. It's really a habit to say why not. And I agree completely. It's about doing things that are new, that take you out of your comfort zone. And I think if we can see the benefits of that, that's a good thing to do, then maybe it's easier to practice why not. But if you notice that next time someone asks you to do something, notice what's going through your mind, and when no slips out, all that whole process of the thoughts that you've told yourself, and then try and just practice by saying, gritting your teeth and saying, why not? Yeah. Because at the other side of that, Chris, is a life that you don't know about. Imagine if I'd said no and stuck on the couch, and I hadn't said why not to all those things. Potentially as an extreme, I'd still be stuck on the couch. I'm sure I wouldn't be, but just to have that realization and to stretch myself, has been a huge gift.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's pop back to you, Catherine. Another question that I had, and actually I just need to check with our producers. Are there any questions coming in? Because I'm not seeing any. They haven't. Okay, well, hopefully there's somebody else out there. So everybody, if you do have questions, please don't be shy. Catherine, the economic argument that you put forward sounds very sound. It seems sound to me. But has any analysis been done here in New Zealand of the relative costs of intensified development as opposed to sprawl development? It does seem that many decision makers are prone to say, "Oh, that's from somewhere else," and we're unique in New Zealand. So, are you aware of any that has been done here?
Absolutely. So the Sense Partners report that we commissioned that featured in the presentation was exactly that. So I was inspired. I'd seen the work of an organisation called Urban 3 that operates in the US, and they've done amazing work, including they did one for Auckland City as well. They were approached by Auckland City Council, I think, a while back, and did it there. And what they did was mapped the cost of the relative cost of different forms of urban form, i.e., central city, high intensification, medium density, perhaps more out, further out from the centre, and then suburbia, low density sprawl, and showed that from the city's municipal perspective, from a city's perspective, it costs a lot more per household, per person, probably more on a household basis, to supply the infrastructure. So so that's things like free waters, your wastewater, your potable water, your town water supply, and that sort of thing, plus the other infrastructure, roading and so on. So we were really curious to see whether that would be replicated in New Zealand. And so we commissioned Sense Partners, which is an economic analysis agency, a consultancy, to do just that for the Wellington region. And they took actual data, actual costs for three waters infrastructure and roading mainly, and actually looked at how those costs were distributed across the region. And as shown in that graph that I included in my presentation, it very clearly showed that inner city development, which is more dense and mixed use and all that sort of thing, it comes at a much lower cost to councils in terms of infrastructure provision, and therefore much lower costs to residents, who are, after all, ratepayers and taxpayers, compared to greenfield developments, where, generally speaking, new infrastructure has to be built. And in New Zealand, development contributions, which is the contributions that developers pay when they seek to build a new development, usually only covers a portion of the actual cost of infrastructure provision. So unfortunately, in New Zealand, many councils are still they're really keen to get development. Development means growth, and growth is always good and, means a vibrant economy, but often underestimate that comes at a great cost to the balance sheet. You can still have more housing. You can still have new population growth, but it's all about where you put it. But other costs also, as you know, the more and more you spread out, you're often, and this is the case in Palmerston North, this is the case in many places around Auckland, etc. The more you spread out, the more likely you are to incur other costs, such as building over high productivity soils, which only make up a tiny proportion of all soils in New Zealand. We tend to think that we've got these rich, fertile soils. We don't. Only a small proportion are good for growing crops. And so the more our cities and towns sprawl, the more likely we are to swallow up high productivity soils, which also comes at a cost to us. And it reduces our options to support ourselves through our food system in the future. And finally, we know, and this is the case, although, it's harder to quantify these sort of things, the more we sprawl, often the places that haven't been built on for very good reasons. And often those reasons are that they are flood prone or prone to liquefaction or are previously wetlands or have high water tables or, all of the above. And actually, we didn't build on them because it's not such a great idea. So when you build on those, especially as climate change really kicks in, the cost downstream, sometimes literally downstream, are going to be really high, particularly for those people that live there. And we saw that in the Hawke's Bay and in Christchurch and so on after the earthquakes with liquefaction and so forth. So yeah, but yeah, in terms of direct response to your question, absolutely, that was the whole reason why we commissioned that research, to show that that holds here in New Zealand too.
Well, maybe it's a matter of getting it out and shared even more, and perhaps today will have helped to have done that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Look, thanks very much to all of you. I see we've actually gone slightly over time, so we need to close the session now, but would really like to thank Catherine, Patricia and Julie for speaking to us today. I certainly found it extremely interesting, and three very different takes on walking. And just want to remind the audience that we'll start again at 1 o'clock in the, I think it's a next plenary session, and I presume Tim will be back to introduce us to what's going to happen then. So thank you once again. Thank you to the audience, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock. Enjoy your walk.